All right, so welcome to our lightweight naked bike shootout with the Royal Enfield Continental, the Suzuki TU250X, Honda CB300F, another Suzuki, the GW250, and then the Yamaha SR400. All naked, all lightweight, small displacement motorcycles. And with us today are two guest testers, Jess and Ty. So Jess, we'll start with you. What do you like about these bikes?
You know, each one has got its own kind of unique character to it. Something kind of cool about it, I suppose. I mean, I love the styling on the Royal Enfield. If you want like classic bike, I'm not even gonna call it modern because I don't think they've changed in a long time. If you want a cool classic bike, this one has a great look. It's got a lot of character to it.
Which then leads me to Ty.
Second bike would be the GW250. It just felt a little top heavy, and it just felt like it wanted to fall over, and it didn't have a whole lot of power up top or down low or just anywhere.
The SR has styling that I like a lot. I'd go for that classic look. Not big on the fact it doesn't have an electric start. To admit, I'm not very good at kickstarting it. And probably my least favorite handling of the bunch.
The TU250, I really dug the way this thing rode. It was really flickable, stable at high speed and through the tight stuff. I was grinning in my helmet the entire time because you could pin the throttle, and even though it didn't really have anything, it still felt like you were having fun at 30 miles an hour.
This CB feels like the most grown-up of the bikes. It's definitely the fastest and the most powerful. It felt the most to me like a bigger bike.
I think my favorite bike out of all of them would be the Honda. It feels the most grown up to me. It felt the most stable, and it had good brakes and decent acceleration.
Yeah, well, you know, you gotta almost expect that to be the favorite amongst the bunch when you've got a really modern bike like the Honda and to an extent the Suzuki. I think we're splitting this test kind of in a way between these modern looking nakeds like the Honda and the GW, and then these kind of retro modern SR, TU, and the Enfield. So, you know, when you split it amongst that way, I guess, JB, Tom, it's kind of a distinct class between the two styles of bike, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you kind of have to pull a distinction off of this, saying, you know, this bike has actually been in production since 1978, basically, and so has that Royal Enfield. That's been around since 1950 something, so they've been modernized over time. But I mean, you know, they're not like modern throwbacks. They're just the way they were. I mean, obviously, you know, you got your kind of more modern styled bikes here, and I guess I would at least have to go with Ty on the Suzuki. That was not my, you know, favorite bike here, the GW. I think it's kind of just got this flop-in sense of handling, and it's got this fender that's too big for a Hayabusa. The brakes just aren't, you know, all that great. I mean, it's heavy. It's the second heaviest bike here, and I think the second least powerful motorcycle here. So it's kind of got a lot of things not going for it. On the other flip side of the Suzuki, you got the TU over here, lightest, least powerful, but you know, as Jess was saying, I mean, this is a thing that you could, you know, do your DMV test on. It's a real beginner motorcycle, where the Honda is, like I said, a grown-up bike. That's something that, you know, a more experienced person would want to purchase that one.
I kind of think for me it comes down to, we got like two different groups of bikes here. Like if you need a bike for transportation, you go with the Honda or the Suzuki. I actually didn't mind the Suzuki that much. I thought it was pretty fun to ride. We're on Highway 39, real tight and twisty. We actually had a blast on all these bikes. They don't have much power, but you don't need it here. But if you need transpo, either the Honda or the Suzuki have modern radial tires, and they go good on the freeway and everything. The other three are kind of like toys to me. Like the other three are kind of for people that already have a garage with a couple of other bikes in it that they ride a lot, and you just want like a backup thing to go around short hops around town. Not that you can't go distances on these, but I think I have to go with the Royal Enfield if it was me. It has a little bit of it has a lot of vibration, but it's kind of centered around. It's all centered like 3,500 RPM. And if you go above or below that, then it's not so bad, you know. The kids are just spoiled. You kids, you don't know what vibration was. Back in my day, everything vibrated.
Yeah, but that thing feels like you're holding a couple of shake weights. Yeah, like, not that. No, I'm guessing. I think that's what it feels like.
I don't know what a shake weight is, but I'll take your word for it.
The thing is, I was thinking, if these bikes are kind of aimed at beginner riders, what would be the least intimidating, the most accessible, the easiest to ride, and maybe the most fun? And honestly, while the Enfield did handle really well in the corners, it was much better than I thought, and the brakes are good. That shaking is a lot to deal with, and there's a few moments where I wasn't sure I could actually reach for the brake or grip it because the shaking was so bad.
Making your hands feel numb.
Yeah, and just awkward and uncomfortable, and that's one more thing to think about when you're riding the bike, which it was honestly unpleasant.
If you were on this side of it, you can see it's got a Kickstarter, just like the SR does, but it also has an electric starter. Now, this is kind of fun for a while, and then you go, I wish I could just push the button and get going. But that one gives you the option to just push the electric starter too.
That single sounds great with the, pipe on it. It's a stock pipe, but it sounds cool, and the seating position's cool.
And it's about the same price as the SR 400, right?
They're both $6,000.
Both $6,000. So
Well, they're
I mean,
like $10 apart, but yeah.
The SR is pretty fun, but they can't really approach the cool of that thing.
I mean, if we're talking about price, the CB300 Honda is $4,000. The TU is $4,400. The GW is $4,000 as well. Then the Yamaha and the Enfield are just shy of $6,000.
I mean, imagine if you had never ridden a bike before and you hopped on these, because we're kind of coming at this like, comparing it to bigger bikes, more power. But for instance, between these two, I prefer this one because I do think it's a lot more fun. If I were a new rider, I wouldn't know any better. I would go ahead and go on the freeway on this thing. I started on a Nighthawk 250, and yeah, I took that thing on the freeway. I'm a smaller person, too.
You could take that on the freeway, but you couldn't do 80 on it, I don't think.
I probably wouldn't want to. If I'm a beginner rider, what do I care? If I can do 65, 70, I'm good. And it feels stable and planted. And why would I want that one? Because it's heavier, it's taller, it's heavier, and if I'm a brand new rider and I'm a smaller person, then I don't need to deal with managing the weight and a little bit of top heaviness on that thing. If I'm giving up a little bit of power, I don't care. This actually is really fun and easy to ride and maneuver, and it's pretty much stress-free, whereas that guy, maybe a little bit too much weight.
So I think I could agree in the sense also that I would pay $400 more for this one over the GW here.
If it's the bike I want, I might.
That's what, but there's a lot of plastic on this thing to break and crack and replace and look really bad if you dropped it, where on this thing, a little scuff or a ding, it's not going to show up near as much.
The way this TU250X thing looks is, I think it looks cooler than the GW250 look. If we're going to compare apples to apples, this retro styling feels to me more than that. I don't know what that is, modern Vulcan transformer plastic something from somewhere that I don't know where it's from. But I would rather be seen on that for $400 more than be seen on that. And that's kind of a cool thing as a beginner too. It's an image thing.
So if you're a beginner, why wouldn't you just hop straight on the Honda, the 300F, and ride away?
I think Ty just hit on it though, because having taught a lot of new riders and talking to a lot of new ones, a lot of them get into it because motorcycling is cool. It looks cool, it makes you feel cool. This bike looks cool. A lot of them are going to go for what makes the heart beat. And the TU250, the Enfield, the TU250 and the Enfield both look and feel really cool. And that's what the step that gets a lot of people into motorcycling. And then as their skills develop and they realize maybe they want more power, better handling, they'll move on to something else.
I'd rather save the money and buy the Suzuki, roll around on this for a year, get my bearings, and then when I'm looking to upgrade, fall into something more powerful.
Well, it's kind of funny because the Royal Enfield is the largest displacement bike that we have here, but it's only about 21 horsepower, and the Suzuki, the TU, is about 14.8. So we're only talking about 5 or 6 horsepower more out of a substantially larger bike and actually a substantially heavier motorcycle. So to justify paying the extra price is going to be a lot of just a mindset of like, ooh, I like that cafe racer look of the Enfield, which I sort of get. I'd also like to say though, actually the Yamaha was, I thought, a good handling motorcycle. It's nimble, it's light, it's thin. I had no problem with it, going through the twists. You just could go in confident and drag all kinds of stuff and had just an absolute blast on it. Where I stumble on this bike is, again, the asking price, $6,000 for kickstart only. I think, being that it's been in production for 40 years or so, a Yamaha could have updated it with a little electric starter.
You're being kind of unfair to the Royal Enfield though too, because then it's the torque monster of the bunch, isn't it? And it made like 27 foot-pounds at like 6 RPM too, didn't it? So it's the old-fashioned chopper, and you totally ride it different than the other ones, right? You just put it in top gear and just kind of chug along
I mean,
on it.
if you're new to motorcycles, but you're a tinkerer, you like to get your hands dirty in your garage, you're like a backyard mechanic, I think you might gravitate towards the Enfield. It's got, everything's exposed, there's a lot of metal on it for you to customize.
It does look cool.
And it does look cool, and those singles, you know, there's lots of room to tinker around and just make some go fast goodies and make the bike your own.
Well, I think it requires more tinkering right out of the box than does the fully exposed Yamaha or fully exposed TU250.
You got to tinker with the vibrations and do something to dampen those, because that's the buzz kill right there on that bike.
Literally.
Literally, if that thing was smoother, it would be a different discussion, at least for me.
So we've been talking a lot about the Enfield, good and bad, and really haven't paid a lot of attention to the Honda and the GW, and that's kind of because the Honda and the GW are so, for lack of a better word, they're so refined, they're so perfect. I mean, they behave like we would expect from a new modern motorcycle, and there's just so much more to talk about with the Enfield, with the TU, and with the Yamaha, because they're throwbacks to an earlier time about how bikes used to be. We don't have a winner yet, so what we're going to do is we're going to go back home, really jot down our brains, write some stuff down, fill out a scorecard, and really talk amongst ourselves and figure out who's on top and who's not. So to see who wins, go to motorcycle.com and read the story.